Hello, I'm Lowell, he, him, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. This show draws on the experience and play of the Open Hearth Gaming Community. We are an online RPG gaming group which has a lot of different kinds of games and gaming, story games, OSR, solo, and more. I'll mention that we use safety tools for all of the play in our community because sometimes that pisses people off, and I love their salty tears. We've got some events right now. We're in the middle of Mecha March, and we've got a Star Wars Minicon coming up in the community. I'll have links in the show notes so you can check all that stuff out. As usual, we have brought on a pair of community members. They are here to discuss their recent gaming and drill down onto an RPG they've played, read, or watched. I asked on these two because we just did an episode on running long campaigns, and these are two people who play a lot of longer campaigns, 24 years long campaigns. So, Tyler, thank you for being on the podcast.
Hi there.
And Patrick, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, we're going to go around and have everyone tell us just briefly about their recent gaming, like what they played recently, have coming up, and then talk about a particular game. So, Patrick, how has your recent gaming gone?
Sure. It's been a little on and off. Scheduling is a constant crisis in gaming with other humans. But we are playing a Scum and Villainy game right now. We're sort of getting towards the end game of that, which is interesting, trying to narrow our focus from an entire galaxy down to one story. We are also playing a game of Mountain Home, which has been going on for a while and might go on for forever. I'm not sure. It's especially for a Forge game, one of the longest legs on a game I've seen. We're also playing a game of Rapscallion with Lowell, which is a super fun game of fantasy pirate wacky hijinks, and I just love seeing how far over the top we can push it every single time. It's just great. And then we're not quite playing, but Tyler and I are currently getting ready for a couple of games of Daggerheart and a game of Ars Magica, which Ars Magica is the game I sort of want to talk a little bit more about.
Excellent. It has been years and years since I played Ars, so I'm very curious because I know you played it much more recently.
Yes, it's a great game. Like you said, it's been around for forever. We specifically have recently been playing 5th edition of Ars Magica, and we're going into the definitive edition, which is basically the 5th edition, just with more polish on it. So Ars Magica, briefly, it's a historical fantasy game about playing scholarly wizards, their companions, and their communities in a mythical version of medieval Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. We played a several-year campaign starting back in 2020, and with the recent release of the definitive edition, we're planning to come back for not exactly a reboot, but a remix of our previous game. So ours came out originally in 1987. It's passed hands between multiple companies over the years. Like I said, it got to a 5th edition and now a sort of 5th plus edition. It's been through a lot of changes. We've been playing the 5th edition, which is the most expansive edition. There are most books for it. It sort of went on for the longest. But the last book for it came out about a decade ago, so it's been quiet for quite a while. Then in late 2024, Atlas Games ran a backer kit campaign for a definitive edition of the game, collecting all the player resources and sort of incremental rules adjustments they'd made over the run of 5th edition into one genuinely massive book. We haven't seen the physical thing yet. It's still at the printer, but we have the backer PDF for it, and it's around 600 pages. I cannot even imagine what it's going to be like when it comes in. So since the definitive edition is out, at least in PDF form, it's had our home group sort of talking about our old game and how we had always meant to come back to it. We ended our old campaign because a dear friend of ours and a member of the group that we were playing with passed suddenly. and he was very much the like driving force
Hmm.
behind us starting the game and was always pushing for us to play it. So we did decide to step away from it for a while. It was just emotionally complicated. It was a little too painful to go there at that time. But it's been several years now, and it's become less a painful reminder of him and more a way to remember like the fun times that we had with him
Hmm.
and the genuine love that he had for the game. One really amazing thing that they've done with the definitive edition is that they reached out to all their backers, since this is a game that's been out for decades, to ask for memorials of any lovers of Ars Magica who have passed over the years.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to send in his information. There's a beautiful dedication page towards the front of the book, and he's going to be a part of it forever, which I think is really cool.
Hmm.
All right, so ours in general is a game that's made for long campaigns. It plays out slowly over a lot of time, both in game and out of game. It approaches wizards as academics, as people who study in depth over years and years to make small incremental advancements with their magic, to study for a long time just to learn one new spell or just to advance your understanding in one particular type of magic. And the gameplay itself is generally measured out over seasons and years. There are moments when you zoom in and you focus on a particular adventure, something that may be more like a traditional RPG structure, something that happens over the course of days or weeks. But that's sort of the exception with ours. And more often, you're sitting back with charts and numbers and calculations trying to figure out what they did over the course of the entire fall, what they did over the course of this entire year, what they did over the last 5 years. And the characters themselves, at least the wizards, are very much geared and incentivized towards that sort of long-term play. Leaving and going on these exciting adventures in the magical mythic Europe is very much a distraction for them. It's taking them away from the things that they really want to be doing, which is maybe writing the next chapter of their scholarly tome. So there's a lot of bookkeeping involved in playing the game as well, not just in the characters in the game. You have to keep up with your wizard character. You're generally encouraged to make two or three other characters that are also a part of the general wizard community that you're in, your covenant. You also have to keep up with the structure and advancement of the covenant and how you're making money and who you're paying and how you're getting your magical resources and what you're doing with them and how you're dealing with the mortal society around you. There's just endless lists of things to keep track of. And if you choose to keep track of all of it, there's a lot going on. So over the course of playing online, I've become very used to using things like Google Sheets character keepers and shared resources where we can all put our characters in together. And in setting up for this game, I started looking around for what we could use. And I did find where a couple of people online have made various Google Sheets character keepers. The best one that I found, which seemed really thorough and a great choice, was about 15 tabs for one character, which,
Wow.
yeah, can can be a little much. So we're looking at other options. When we played the first time, there was a great program called MetaCreator, which had really expansive files for Ars Magica. I know it had the stuff for other games as well. But I found out just recently that in like the past 3 years, sometime, the creators of it retired, took it down for sale. You can't get MetaCreator anymore,
Mm.
which is very unfortunate. But one of the neat things about the crowdfunding campaign for the Ars Magica Definitive Edition was that they opened up all of Ars Magica to an open gaming license. So there have been a few supplements that have come out. I've looked through on Drive-Thru RPG. There are some interesting books that people have come out with. But one of the most interesting things I've seen is a site called arsmagicamanager.com, which is an amazing free resource made possible by the open license. It's built and maintained by Lady Ath is the name that they put up. And it is a free site that will guide you through character creation, check the rules against what you're doing, but not restrict you. You can come up with your own custom content for it. You can do whatever you want. It'll make a really nice looking character sheet for you. It will make a really nice looking covenant sheet that you can put all of your various characters and wizards in, and your friends can sign in. It's a browser based app, and everyone can be a part of managing and adding to the group sheets together. So I think that's probably what we're going to use.
Awesome.
It looks great and it's super functional. So the other part of Ars Magica that I wanted to talk about is the fact that it is a game that you play over a long time. And while it is interesting at times to dig down into the specifics and the little fiddly bits of learning incrementally, of upping your magic bit by bit, like any sort of gameplay loop, it can become a bit dull or lose some interest over time. It's something that not everybody is going to be in the mood for all the time. Homework can sometimes get a little dull. So in our previous campaign, we did a number of things to try and keep the mood changing, keep interest in it. One thing that we did is that with all of the characters that you have available to you, it's something that's really set up well for troop style play, where you pass off GMing. One person tells a particular story that they want to tell, and you pass it off to someone else who tells a new sort of story that they want to tell. Constantly keeps the style and mood of it changing, which is a good way to keep things interesting. But we also started bringing in other games into our Ars Magica game to tell different sorts of stories in the world that we were building. Specifically, we used The Quiet Year by Avery Alder at one point to tell the story of 5 or 6 years all at once over the course of the game of The Quiet Year. It let us skip forward through some time faster than we had been moving before. And it also forced us to take a broader look at the community around our wizard characters rather than just their particular small viewpoint. The Quiet Year is also great because it really forces you to make some painful decisions for your community that you may want to keep precious and perfect inside of its little bubble if something isn't forcing you to have bad things happen, which sometimes bad things happen, and what you do about them is really interesting. The other sort of side game that we played was we used A Pillion by Marissa Kelly, game about adorable young dragons exploring their magical world, to tell a story about adorable young magical children exploring the strange covenant and magical community that they found themselves in. It was a great way to come back to the wonder and mystery of magic, to take it away from being numbers on a chart and bits of XP that you're multiplying together, and bring excitement and vivid colors back into it. It was also a great way, since ours is a game that you can play very well over generations, telling the story of the next generation of wizards and the next. It was a great way for us to build up the cast of who would be our next generation, who would be the apprentices and companions of the next several decades of our game.
So let me ask you a question. Is this a game that you are GM lean into or player lean into?
Me personally?
Yeah, I'm very curious about that.
I think I always tend more towards the player end of things.
Okay.
I have gotten more comfortable with GMing over the years, but it's never my first impulse. I do think just because we're being very proactive about passing the story around this time. I'll probably be looking for the hook in our world of what's the story that I think I can tell in this. But I love coming up with a weird character, diving deep into them, finding the strange magical animal that they hang out with, or the crazy adventures they go on. That's always my hook into a game.
Okay. Tyler, I have to ask you this. What is your like go-to tradition? Like what are you going to play? Like I'm really curious because you always have strong senses about these things.
I tend to play Bonasegas. The politicians and the leaders of the traditions is my usual go-to.
You think you're going to lean into it for that again?
Yes, okay. I have a very interesting character for that.
Okay, awesome. Patrick, anything else you want to say about Ars?
Not really. I'm excited about the game. You know, every game that I go into, I look for where is the wizard character and how can I play that. And this is a game that's all wizard characters, top to bottom. You can't make a bad choice. That's
great. That is awesome. Tyler, how has your recent gaming been? We're going to be going over some of the same things for each of us, but I'm curious about that.
It is true. Yes, Patrick and I generally play together. So I've been running Scum and Villainy. I've been running Mountain Home.
I should say this. Tyler and Patrick are people who are awesomely lucky to be able to play with their spouse. Super privileged and super fun.
You also have that.
I know. Well. I understand my privilege here. So
it's a good position to be in.
Yes,
it is. It's wonderful. We've been playing Rapscallion with you, which Rapscallion is phenomenal, so interesting. I have been enjoying it. As I say, Scum and Villainy, we've been running for a little over a year, and it is kind of heading towards. I've started focusing in on what's going to be the end for that. Mountain Home, which, as Patrick says, seems to have endless legs, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more here shortly. I've also been reading Daggerheart and about to start a couple of games of that. I'm very excited about it, and the Ars, which I adore Ars. I truly think it's one of the best games ever made. If you like a little crunch, and I do like a little crunch. But what I was kind of wanting to talk about broadly is running games that are in a long-form campaign setting style. I think probably all of us can remember or have heard of people that had their 5 or 6 year campaigns in high school and middle school. You even hear of people with their decades long campaigns that they're running and have played in. Generally speaking, they're talking about trad games. They're talking about the Dungeons and Dragons. They're talking about the White Wolves, the Champions, because those games really are very well set for playing long term. I mean, you have 20 levels in Dungeons and Dragons. You can play for a very long time in that. You can endlessly play with your XP in Champions or in White Wolf. You can continue those for a very long time. But most of us have, certainly here on Open Hearth, have adopted some of the story games. And it is not immediately intuitive in a lot of those that you can run them more long term. And honestly, some of them really aren't well set to be run long term. I found with Scum and Villainy, even though we played for a year or so and we play roughly every week or so, it reaches a point where your characters plateau. You've gotten all of the cool things and you're kind of bored with the character. I think that when you look at a game and you've explored out that character, it's time to get off that game.
Mm-hmm.
Something like Mountain Home, in comparison, has longer legs. And there are a couple of factors to that. For Mountain Home, I think that the XP system really helps in being able to extend the game. Rather than an end of session XP, you have an end of year, kind of your downtime is when you get XP, which means that you really feel an accomplishment as you're building out those abilities, as you're building out those characteristics, because it can take a while to get there. You feel like your character still has more to do. With Mountain Home, it is a forged game, and as the crew sheet for Black Blades, it has the Mountain Home itself. And to give an idea of what Mountain Home is, you're a bunch of dwarves traveling to start a new home. With the crew sheet or mountain itself, you have buildings you're creating, and you take time to do that building up of the mountain. You do things to advance the mountain to where more people are joining the community. So that expands NPCs that you could bring in. It makes it fresh all the time because you're advancing a culture, not just advancing a party. You also have factions outside of the mountain who are evolving, and they could be people you're diplomating with, or they could be people you're warring with, and they have their own specific things that they're wanting to do. And that brings in factors that expand that story, give people things to do. When you, as a dwarf, might want to stay inside your mountain and build all the cool things, these people outside are forcing you to go wander and look and figure out what's happening. It ends up giving life that provides a long-term story arc and multiple story arcs. Those chances to extend the play of the game without it becoming stale. That is something that as it's designed, works really well with. We played for, I believe, over a year and a half, and we definitely feel like there's so much more to do. The characters have more things that they want to accomplish. The mountain itself, the community, has things it wants to accomplish. And as long as you've got that, you can continue a campaign, well, right up to the point when people start saying, I think I've got it all done. Now, there's other games. We played The Between. We played it for 5 years.
Oof.
And part of what we did with it is like Patrick was talking about with ours. At times, we would bring in other games to spice up that feel. Like we had begun to have our Hargrave house get a sentience of its own that was a little malevolent. So I said, okay, as I'm running that, let's explore what that is. So I went back and ran Bluebeard's Bride, only replacing Bluebeard with the original Lord Hargrave in a mythical England. So we figured out what made the original Lord Hargrave, who now kind of spiritually is embodying this house. We built some structure behind it. We then later on went and did some Monster of the Week in an Elizabethan period to see where Hargrave House was there. And it informed, when we went back to Victorian period, why things were happening, where the story could lead that made it different and new, right there in Hargrave House itself. The game, you have an arc that is a mastermind. Once we had defeated that, we moved on to another mastermind. The game let itself keep being played. But it is a game that you get to a point relatively easily of, I've got everything for this character. I have played out this character. But The Between, it is easy for a character to die. There are lots of great moments of characters dying or limping off to a halted retirement. So it's a game that really plays nicely when you bring in new playbooks. You start them, a player gets to start fresh with something new and explore that storyline. And that gives length to a campaign. We went through several characters. All the players kind of had a chance to go through several different playbooks. And that kept a fresh new outlook on what they wanted to do, motivations that they had. And it filled up a 5-year period with still a lot of interest in what would come next. As Patrick said, ours is designed to be long play. It's another game that, can be quite storytelling. It is very trad, but it has a lot of elements that are storytelling. that lets you want to continue on. I think that if you look at most storytelling games, you can find ways, certainly to extend it beyond that 8 session game, or, even something like, a half year. But it's always looking to where the players are managing to find something new, but never extend beyond the point where you're starting to see your players get bored. I love to tell a story, but when you start to see those eyes get dull, and you could feel it as a GM, it's time to wrap it up. Your vanity for that art can be put to bed, and you find your way to come to an end.
It's interesting because, of course, my instinct, even though I'm a person who's run lots and lots of long campaigns, is always, okay, I got to get this wrapped up. Got to move on to something else. And I mean, we played what, 18, 20, 24 sessions of Mountain Home? We did. And then there was a little bit of a break, and you were like, oh, we're playing Mountain Home. And I was like, oh, okay. And then like you went so far past like the number of sessions that we did to that. So I love that. That's just amazing to me.
It really is a game that can have great legs. We played Godbound for quite a long time, and it felt like a game that could just keep going.
Yeah.
I often wonder, here in Open Hearth, we, by necessity, are putting up games for a limited amount of time. We just don't have the ability to plan out endless campaigns, because what we're looking for is a chance for people to get to play with new folks and play and try out new things.
Yeah.
But it's possible, you're going to meet people here on Open Hearth, and sometimes you could say, we could play a game here on Tuesday that is us, and then come back on Wednesday and have these new experiences with brand new systems and brand new players. So, exploring what you could do in gaming, it's the wonder of what Open Hearth has done for us, is find so many people who love to game.
Yeah, there is that tension of, I love that we have so many people, and I love when people graduate and find their games and find their, we're going to play this for a long time games, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, okay, you guys are going to be off in your own little silo. But, I feel like a really weird parent in that regard.
Well, and here on Open Hearth, I've run things for Monster of the Week by Dalton Adventures, which aren't long-term campaign, but it is all set in one place. And that's another way that you could kind of get the feel of a campaign. And I've had recurring players who come back because they're interested in playing in that space. But of course, you're changing out story and characters and all of that.
Patrick, what is your thought? Are there other like long campaign games that are story games? We played, and we had very different opinions on it, but we played Girl by Moonlight. And I think Girl by Moonlight is so interesting because it does bake in that clock to the campaign on almost all of them. Like it's going to go a little bit longer, but boy, there's a play clock on that. You're going to have to wrap the arc on it.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think that is one of the strengths of story games like that, where they manage to fit what feels like a big long story, a big long character arc into a short time. And I think Girl by Moonlight does a nice thing where it has several different completely separate campaign frames, so that you can love the game, you can love the feel of it, but still keep refreshing it, go into a new story mode, into a new genre, into a new universe, and keep the stories rolling on.
Tyler, anything else you want to say about this topic?
No, I think I probably went on far too long.
No, all good. So I'll talk about my stuff. These last few months have been just awful in terms of events and scheduling and so on. I have been able to play Rapscallion a little bit, but intermittent since the beginning of the year. Same thing with Band of Blades. I was doing a playtest of Throne of Suns, and then that got knocked. all to hell. And so I think we got 4 sessions out of that before we're kind of like, okay, this is cursed. We've got to stop that. The most I've actually gotten is I've been doing game facilitator camp, and so I got to play For the Queen and Fire Bandit, which is a 24XX game, and Stealing the Throne and Hunters Inc. So these are all new games to me, one shot. So that I kind of love. But the thing I want to talk about is, so we swapped over, and I may have mentioned this on the program before on one of the episodes, that I'm doing a homebrew game with Shadowrun, and that comes out of, we were playing Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition, and that's what I want to talk about. I've talked about it before a little bit on the Open Hearth podcast, but also we just did an episode on Mutants and Masterminds for Roll for Origin, and I had been playing this campaign as Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition, and then when they put out the beta for 4th edition, I switched over. I was very happy with it. Like, long story short, mechanically, I really like Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition. If I want a Trad Supers game, it's absolutely my thing. But I'm also really glad and very, very relieved that the group was willing to put that Supers game on hold, even though we've been playing it for a while, and switch over to this homebrew cyberpunk game, with the promise that eventually we'll go back to the Supers game. And I say that despite having all of Mutant Masterminds books. I had tons of pictures printed. I've got like 1,000 hero clicks. I have the Batman miniatures game. Got them all primed and dusted. I bought the STLs for the DC miniatures game. Like, I am set to run Supers. I bought a huge stack of HeroClix maps, like several dozen of the fold-out maps. We get battle maps and things like that. But, and again, I talked about this a little bit on the episode we did about running superhero games. Boy, I don't think I can run a modern-based superhero game right now. The world is too awful and fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself continually struggling with, there's all this shit going on in the real world. And am I referencing that? How am I referencing that? How are we dealing with that? We had, before we started, in the very early days of the new Trump administration, and we had these refugees from another dimension in the city, and we're kind of playing with some things about immigrants and immigration. And then suddenly the tone and tenor of that discussion changed.
Oh, yeah.
And as that got worse, the players were very good because they're playing year one characters. So they're playing existing characters, but this is a collaboratively built world. So we've got, a person who's running Raven from Teen Titans, and a Silver Surfer character, and Doctor Strange. And so they've got some of that backstory in, but wow, it was so hard for me. Like, how am I going to engage with this? And it really struck me a few months ago when there was a post in the Discord community about how much the Marvel's superhero movies and comic books and supers in general, they are about the status quo.
Yeah.
While supers change things, they are in most part about maintaining that established status quo. They are not actually fundamentally making changes to the world. They are not fundamentally challenging the existing systems. And that really got in my head about it. And I found myself really trapped thinking about this, and pulling back from certain stories and trying to put other things out there, and not sure what I wanted to do. And like, I thought, okay, what would a real status quo supers thing, like a real challenge, look like? And the only things I could think of were the Authority, and I'm certainly not going to do an Authority game. If you want to look at a kind of cynical version of how that is, you compare the Watchmen comic to that Watchmen television series. That Watchmen television series is, yes, they challenged the status quo and they fucking failed.
Yeah.
The only other ones I could think of is like, are almost invariably about awfulness, like The Boys
Oh,
or
goodness.
Irredeemable. Like, so that was really hard for me. And so, yeah, I am glad I put that to bed. And I don't know that I could run a Modern Supers right now. I've been thinking about it, and if I were going to start a fresh Supers campaign, I think there are a couple of ways I could go about it. One is that I would come in with a much stronger, more hard frame setting, like we're playing in the DC universe.
Mhm.
We know what the DC universe looks like. We know what the world is. It's not our world. It has its own logic and things like that. And we're playing in that, or we're playing in the MCU.
Mhm.
And so we know what that world is. It's not our world because we kind of did a collaborative building, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions about what the world looks like. And so those are questions I was having to ask myself is, you know, is ICE enforcing things on the streets of Seattle? And what would the supers do if they ran into that? And I was like, I don't want to play that out because the loop of that is not good. I think there's a game to be played for that,
Mhm.
but I don't think that you can approach it in the way that you would approach a classic supers game. I think you'd have to really think about what an actual vigilante revolutionary game looks like. The other suggestion that I would do if I were going to do supers, and this is probably actually what I would go with, is when we went to play Sunken Hearts, Tyler, you were like, I don't want to play modern. I played a bunch of modern with this stuff, and we set it back in 2000, and that was
Mhm.
great. We
I
did
was
it.
going to ask
Yeah.
if maybe going to a different time period might
Yeah.
help you.
Like doing an X-Men 87,
Mhm.
or doing, an early 2000s, like something like that. That would be the other approach. Or even doing one of the like the fun, you know, historical timeline building games. Progenitor for Wild Talents does that, or doing a Victorian game or something. But I
Mhm.
think I would have to do that. I've been thinking about eventually we probably will go back to the Mutants and Masterminds game. And what I definitely want to do is if we're going to play it, I need to make the world more weird and fantastical and more clearly not our world. And
Mhm.
maybe we're doing dimension hopping. Maybe we're having bleed from another universe. Maybe we're changing up the terms of things there just to make that break away. Because I'm kind of a coward. Because I don't necessarily want to. I mean, there is a place for that, and I would love to run that, but that is not the escapist supers on every other Friday night thing that I think I
Mhm.
can get. So it's really hard. I don't know what you all think about it.
I agree with you. I mean, I can see where you can run a game in a, revolutionary or a opposition to the real world. You've got to have a group that really wants to buy into that.
Yeah.
And there's a self-care element to most people are kind of wanting to play a game to not have to think about the horribles. And, I think you can explore anything in a game, but you got to find a group that really wants to do that. I like that idea though of looking back to a pastime. You could hit the hard-boiled noirs or the 70s glam or something in there that what's gonna happen, so you don't
Hmm.
have to explore the immediate terribles. But yeah, this is right now our current timeline is so bad. And it's understandable that comics don't make massive shifts
Yeah.
because they've got to figure, well, we're going to be writing a comic book in 5 years. We can't have changed our world completely from what the real world is. But there is an element of, you know, I don't agree that you're a coward, but I would be a little scared
Yeah.
to try to explore that in a way that's going to make people have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick?
I also I also like what you were saying about making an ostentatiously weird setting. There's something in me that I can watch any sort of media that's fantasy based and I can watch the worst body horror, the most extreme violence or whatever, but I get real nervous and scared around a just straight up slasher film. The more real world things get, the more I'm putting myself in that situation, but having all those layers of this world is weird and nothing works like I think it will, and I can't see myself in that setting, gives me a lot more ability to handle the hard stuff like that.
Yeah, need to think about this. If I were to do something on the Open Hearth, I'd love to do maybe something like a wild card style thing, where you do a game where this is 1970s year one for the Supers coming, and you do a game there, and then maybe do ones over the next decades or something. But I just want to get it off my chest because it was a very strange feeling to me.
It's completely understandable.
Listeners, we're going to move on to the second part of our show. Listeners, for our second part, we go through and we ask our guests to tell us about something that they're really digging right now, that they're really enjoying right now, and tell us why. So, Patrick, what's giving you life?
Oh, no. So if we're looking at purely what I'm spending the largest percentage of my waking hours on, I would be saying Baldur's Gate 3. But I think what is giving me just the most joy, the most life right now is related to that Rapscallions game of weird fantasy pirates. The second season of the One Piece live action adaptation on Netflix just came out. We're working our way through that, and it's just pure joy. The actors in it are really great and embody their characters so well. And unlike a lot of other illustration to live action adaptations, this One Piece show just fully embraces the weirdness of everything. You know, you have so many shows that do like the MCU approach where we have to make these fantastical elements seem realistic and fit into a grounded world. And they just throw that out the window. One Piece runs straight towards the insane character designs, the bright colors, the big proportions on everything, and they gleefully go as far as they can get with every single character design, and it's so fun. This season right now that has one of my favorite anime tropes, which is an association of very strange assassins who each show up in ones or twos and announce their weird method of assassination and their strange motivations, and then we throw them off to the side and meet new ones the next time. It's just great.
I love it. I love it. Tyler, what, pray tell, is giving you life?
Well, I'm also enjoying One Piece, but what's giving me life is honestly my beloved husband, Patrick. Here in just a few days will be our 10th anniversary. December was the 20th anniversary of us meeting and falling in love. I've had some little health issues, and Patrick has been so unbelievably supportive and helping me get like my diet changed and going out of his way to make sure that I am living a more healthy life and hopefully continuing to do so for a good while. I am very lucky to have found a gamer to fall in love with. We met when I was acting. I was doing dinner theater and I was bartending, and he was a bartending. He was one of my bar patrons, and he came and saw me act. And I like to say that he fell in love when he saw me on stage. But I know the truth. He fell in love with me when I was DMing him in Dungeons and Dragons.
That's how it works, man. That's how it works.
It's how it works. And I am a very lucky person. And in a figurative and literal way, Patrick is giving me life.
That's so sweet, but you let me talk about stupid pirates before you did all that.
I win.
I will say that part of this conversation is giving me life because I've talked about this before, and now I'm actually even more energized. I really want to take Mountain home and use it to do Ars Magica in a story game. I really want to do that, and I originally was going to kind of do it abstract, but I'm like, well, they've got the stuff out in that open license, why not just go ahead and do a full Ars Magica reskin?
Absolutely.
Oh, do it.
Yeah, I got to work on that now. Ondish has a game designers like monthly thing now, so I'll have to go and sit in on that.
Nice.
Oof, yeah, I'm excited. Patrick, Tyler, either of you have anything you want to direct us to, places to check you out on social media or where you are in Discord or anything? I don't think that's necessarily your thing.
Yeah, please do not find me online. Do not perceive me.
Okay.
I have a few games up on YouTube if people want to go see some of the things I've run over the years, a lot of it for Open Hearth. Tyler Lominac, you should be able to find me there.
We'll get a link to that. Hey, you know what? You should put up, if you don't already have it on itch, is that ship game that you did.
Oh, Fire Ships at yes.
Yeah.
Fire Ships at Midnight.
That was super fun.
Oh, thank you.
I've been reading a bunch of pirate stuff in preparation for Rapscallion, so that's got me super interested. So, listeners, the Open Hearth Podcast is a production of the Open Hearth Gaming Community. We have an online gaming calendar where folks can sign up for our sessions. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/openhearthgaming.com. Hey, we have a Discord. You can come and check us out on our Discord. We usually talk about games we're playing, games we're going to be playing, that kind of thing. We do recruitment, all of that. We're also on Blue Sky, Tumblr, and Mastodon. And yeah, Discord is a hellscape. Eventually, we're going to have to move from there, but we're holding on to that as long as we can, but who knows? You can find out more about all of that at openhearthgaming.com. Please consider rating, subscribing, reviewing our show. If you're catching this on YouTube, subscribing there, that'd be great. It really helps us out. Tyler, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Mm-hmm.
And listeners, that is our show.